All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's virtual college exploration for Virginia students and today's wonderful session. If you have questions for our panelists, you can submit them using the Q&A button. As a reminder to attendees, your camera and microphone are off, so you're muted and the panelists cannot see you. This session will be recorded though, so if you need to check it out again later, you can go to strivescan.com/Virginia. And of course, this is just one of many college presentations being offered, so you can see the whole schedule also at strivescan.com/Virginia.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. We are William & Mary, Miami University, and University of South Carolina. And we are going to be talking to you a little bit about tonight the best questions to ask a college admission counselor. Now, again, this is just going to be a brief overview of those questions that you can use to get to know the colleges you might be interested in. But to go ahead and start us off, we're going to introduce ourselves. So first and foremost, we have Miami University.
Hi everyone, my name is Randy Miller. I am Miami's Senior Assistant Director of Regional Enrollment for the Mid-Atlantic. So I'm based just outside of Philadelphia, and Virginia is one of the territories that I would typically travel to and recruit in. So feel free to reach out to me if you do have any questions about Miami or anything after this session. I've been with Miami, I was campus-based for 2 years, and this is now my second year as a regional, and I did go to Miami for graduate school.
Awesome. And my name is Christian Burnett. I am an Assistant Dean of Admission at William & Mary. I do a little piece of Northern Virginia, all of California, and then all of Florida. So that's my email if you have any questions. However, my name in the webinar is also our general office email. So if you have any questions, feel free to use either of those and we'll make sure to get you taken care of.
Hello, my name is Casey Paget. I'm the rep for Virginia for USC, and I've been in this role for about 5 years now. I also went to South Carolina for graduate school and absolutely loved it. So if y'all have any questions about admissions or the school in general, feel free to reach out.
So we're going to go ahead and start by giving you all a quick overview of each of our institutions, and then we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about different questions that we receive frequently from students like you. So just to give you a quick overview of Miami, you may be wondering why we're Miami of Ohio. We were actually founded before Florida was a state, so we are the original. As you can see here, we do have 17,000 undergraduate students. We have Division I sports. We have over 120 majors. And so I like to say that we have the opportunities of a large school, but the feeling of a small school because our average class size is about 30. So here you can see some of the statistics, some of the percentages that we have. In terms of what sets Miami apart, I would say the one thing in terms of the application process is we do have a merit scholarship grid. So if you apply to Miami before December 1st and you have at least a 3.5 weighted GPA, then you are guaranteed merit scholarship money at Miami. So just something to take a look at. There's more information about it online. And we are doing a lot of different virtual info sessions, virtual options on our website as well. We are now welcoming seniors to our campus if you would like to sign up for a visit. So once again, my email address is in my name here, so feel free to reach out to me if there's anything I can help you with.
All right, so here is a brief snapshot of South Carolina. So you'll see our average class size on here. You also will see our average test scores and GPA. This is of course from last year's incoming class. We are test optional this year, so I do wanted to make that note. We have about 35,000 students on our campus and 27,000 who are undergrads. We also are ranked for nation's top best honors college for public schools, and so we are really proud of that. It is competitive. It's all 4 years at USC, and you must apply to the honors college in addition to the regular application. We also have about 50-50 in-state typically was last year's incoming class, but as a student body, it's about 56% in-state and 45% out-of-state. And our average class size is about 17:1 for student faculty ratio. So that means that about 85% of our classes have about 50 people or less. So even though we are a large research university, we do have a ton of faculty to make up for that fact.
Awesome, and welcome to William & Mary, everyone. I always say we are a true mid-sized institution at about 8,000 or so total student body. We are the second oldest college in the nation, over 320 years old, something that we're very proud of and something that we have used to our advantage to learn and grow. As you can see here, not only are we old in practice, but we're also innovative and new. About 80% of our undergraduates are doing research across all disciplines, and about 60% of that group goes on to get published in national review journals. As you'll see at the bottom, that average weighted GPA is about a 4.0 to a 4.4. We are also test optional for this year. And when we say optional, we truly mean optional. Whether you submit a test score or not, you are going to be equally considered for all scholarship and admission opportunities. Now, a little bit more about tonight's presentation. We're just going to answer a couple of those questions that you can use to kind of filter your schools and maybe learn a little bit more about them as a system. So starting off, we're really going to focus on academics, student support, campus environment, and admission. Now, with academics, of course, there are a lot of things you want to know about your particular program or your particular major, and you should definitely ask those at each institution. That way you can make sure they have research opportunities or whatever it is that you might be interested in. But there are also a couple of broad options that you can ask to really learn more about academics and academic life at that school. So first is, do different majors have different requirements for admission? This can clue you into a lot of different things. For example, it might tell you how easy it could be to switch majors or how rigid some of those different colleges within the university might be. In addition, it might tell you whether they have a more interdisciplinary approach to learning, or are you really going to be sequestered into one academic area or maybe focusing on just one subject. Again, you can ask this at every school and they'll all give you different pieces of information. And then at the bottom, you can see some follow-up questions that you might want to ask next. Next up, we have what is the average class size and the faculty to student ratio? This might tell you things like, are they more lecture or seminar based? It also might tell you how frequently you might be able to see your advisor or what their caseload might be. In addition, finding out those kind of more statistics-based questions can really allow you to compare schools easily, kind of weigh all of those pros and cons and make that list as easy to follow and as helpful to you as possible. Again, this kind of clues you into what that academic life might be or what that model might be, but it's also just going to be good for getting those basics out of the way. Next is, does your institution practice a liberal arts approach? Now, this kind of goes back to that first question about major versus requirements and different components there, but really with a liberal arts approach, it tells you about what kind of classes you're going to be taking. Is there a general education or a core curriculum type of structure that you'll have to follow? Or do you have elective space in your curriculum? Again, it just kind of clues you in into what kind of classes you might be taking and what their approach to academics might be. Every school is going to do it a little differently, so you're going to want to ask at every school. But again, it might just help you understand a little bit more about what you want your ideal college to look like when you get there.
All right, so student support, and you may not be thinking about this right now, but trust me, you definitely don't want to be behind on this. It does make a really big difference on whether or not you are successful in college. So we wanted to go ahead and give you some tips when you ask about student support. Okay, so first question to ask is, what services does your counseling center offer? And this is important because, again, you just have no idea what you're going to experience when you are in college. And, you know, it can be stressful. There's lots of triggers. Studying can be really overwhelming. Going to class, meeting new friends, trying to balance your extracurriculars, all of that. And so you want to make sure that the school you're looking at has a supportive mental health environment. So asking those questions, you know, do you value health and wellness? What kind of programming and initiatives does your counseling center offer? If you want to be involved on campus with mental health, you know, is there a space to do that? Are there ways to make referrals? So let's say your hallmate or your roommate are starting to show signs of maybe going to counseling. Are you able to refer them? So things like that. So I think it's important to, ask what those colleges value, and a great place to start is to see, where is the counseling center on campus? Is it in the heart of campus? Is it, it's really hard to find? And then of course, asking those questions to those reps can kind of give you more of a idea of, how the support you will receive when you are in college. The next good question to ask is, how do you support first-generation college students? For some background, a first-generation college student is the first person in the family to ever attend college for a 4-year bachelor's degree. This is about 10 years old. This term was definitely not around, a little bit before 10 years. And so I think it's important to see if, your colleges are in the know. Are they aware that first-generation college students may need a little bit more support with mentorship or academic coaching? What kind of programs are going to be offered? Are there retention rates that you should be asking about? So from freshman to sophomore year, who actually comes back? Who returns to go back to school that sophomore year? Are there organizations that can help connect and serve other first-gen students with each other? Are there peer programs to get involved in if you are a first-gen student? So those questions are important to ask just to make sure that you have that support. If you are a first-gen student, or even if you're not a first-gen student, you may have classmates or roommates or friends that might be, and you can help refer them to the right place. Another good question to ask is, how can I get tutoring help? So again, college is going to be stressful. You may be attending lecture halls that are over 100 people. Are you going to be comfortable with raising your hand in class and getting that question answered? Or do you have time between classes, asking your professor for that extra help? Sometimes you may not have time to stay after class and get those questions answered. So a lot of times you'll want to take advantage of the tutoring center. So most schools will have a math tutoring center, an English writing center to help you with those long papers. There are even are opportunities to attend supplemental instruction, which a lot of times means, upperclassmen who are majoring in a science, and they can help teach a section of, Biology 101, and can really help you with your homework and really get those that one-to-one attention. And a lot of that times that can either take place in a tutoring center or a student success center. And then also a great way to, get involved and give back. If you want to be a peer tutor yourself, that is definitely very rewarding and can kind of help you meet new people along the way. And last, a good question for student support is, what does diversity look like on your campus? So you are going to meet lots of different students from different walks of life. The Multicultural Student Affairs office, most students will have an office like that, and they're the ones that house the diverse initiatives on campus. It really does kind of help you figure out the vibe of the campus. Are you going to be supported? The real world is diverse, and so does your campus help you with that? Will they prepare you to be in the know after you graduate? Are they informed on current issues that are happening around the world? Does that college celebrate those differences? Are there advocates for cultural understanding and allies? And so those are things that you want to ask your college rep, either at a college fair or even on a private visit like this, and even getting more specific and asking, what does the Black, Latinx, LGBTQ+, and DACA population look like on your campus? A lot of us are in the know on that. We are constantly reading up on that information. There's so many changes in programming and initiatives that take place constantly on our campus. So ask those questions and we will do our very best to let you know those answers.
So our next category is campus environment. And this really has to do with not just where the university or college is located, but also the vibe on campus. So are students living on campus? Are they living off campus? Is it in a city? Is it in a college town? What is accessible around campus? So that's a little bit about campus environment. So I would say the first thing, thinking about campus traditions, that a lot of different institutions have various campus traditions. Some of them might be you walk a certain way to class, or you don't want to step on something on campus. Some of them might have to do with different events or programs that are held year after year. And another campus tradition could also be when you're an alumni. And so once you do graduate and you either come back for homecoming or some type of event that brings you back to campus with a lot of people that you graduated with, and that can really define a college experience in terms of campus traditions. Typically, when we talk about traditions, it also has to do with bringing a community together. And so it's something that bonds all the students that do attend that institution, and really goes back to probably something that when it comes to a tradition that's been around for years and years and years. So you can see some of the follow-up questions there at the bottom as well when it comes to campus traditions. Another thing that we like to think about as well is, what is the live-on requirement for students? So are you required to live on campus at all? Some institutions do have a requirement that you're required to live on campus all 4 years that they're there. Some of them don't have a requirement at all. So you can start at that institution as a first-year student and you can live off campus, or if you would like to, you could live on campus. So I know that it really just depends on the institution. It does help create a campus community when there are students living on campus. And so that's just another thing to keep in mind, that if you are living on campus when you first start at an institution, you immediately are built into a community. So you will probably have RAs or resident assistants living on your floor that will help plan different programs and events so you can meet the other people on your floor. And also another perk usually of living on campus is that you do have good accessibility to different classes. And so physically, you're probably a little bit closer to different academic buildings, different dining halls, maybe the student union than you would be if you were off campus. But also, of course, off campus does have its advantages too. If you're able to live in a house or you're able to live in an apartment with friends, if that interests you as well. So in terms of the follow-up questions, you can see some of them there at the bottom. Definitely something to keep in mind is, what is the surrounding area like? So is it safe once you're off campus? Is it accessible to get to campus? Is there a bus that you can take if it's nighttime? So just a few other things to think about as well if you are considering living off campus at some point. This kind of relates to the last question, is housing guaranteed all 4 years? So basically what this comes down to is some institutions are able to say, yes, we have a spot for you to live on campus all 4 years that you attend here. And other institutions say, no, unfortunately, we cannot guarantee it all 4 years because we do require it, or we do offer it for students who are first and second years. And so this is just another good question to ask us as reps or as college admission counselors, mainly because it gives you the opportunity to see what the campus environment is. So are students living on campus throughout their whole college experience? Are they moving off? And so going back to the question before, what are the benefits of living on campus versus living off campus? And if housing is not guaranteed all 4 years, that might be okay, but what is the institution doing to help you find out where to live during that maybe second, third, and fourth year where you won't necessarily have a place to live on campus? In terms of another good question to ask when it comes to getting involved on campus, what are some of the more popular organizations on campus? This will really give you an idea of what students are involved in. Are students involved in athletics? Are students involved in student organizations? How many students are involved in community service? So asking us the most popular student organizations on our campus gives you a glimpse into what our student body focuses on. It allows us to share more about which athletic events are popular, if there is fraternity and sorority life on campus, which we will talk about in just a minute, but really, truly what the student body is interested in, and also their level of involvement too. There are some institutions out there that students might not be heavily involved on campus because they're so involved with their coursework, or they're pursuing research opportunities, or maybe they have an internship or a co-op. And so it also gives you the opportunity to gauge the student body, see where their priorities are, and also see what's out there. And maybe you'll be able to explore some new interests in organizations once you start at college as well. And then finally, if I don't join Greek life, will I be left out? This is a really great question. Not every campus has fraternity and sorority life, so I would say that would probably be the first question you would want to ask. But this is a really good follow-up question because some institutions do have a very, very high percentage of people, of students that are involved within Greek life. And so typically, I know for a lot of institutions, if there are a lot of students who are involved with Greek life, usually you're not left out if you're not involved. But it is a good question to ask just because that gives you more insight into the campus community. And another good follow-up question is, if I'm choose not to get involved in Greek life, what are other students involved in? Is it because they're working, or they're on a sports team, or they're really involved with other community service efforts for the institution? And so what are some other opportunities that still allow you to get heavily involved on campus without joining Greek life? Because it isn't necessarily for everyone. And so I would say that that's another good question to be asking us, since obviously Greek life can be somewhat of a touchy subject when it comes to student interest in it.
Awesome. Now we're going to talk a little bit about that admission process. This is probably where you have the most amount of questions, and unfortunately, typically it's this process that most students do completely differently, and most institutions look at it completely differently. So hopefully the following questions will really kind of help you, again, make those comparisons, look at your entire list of institutions, but also learn more about them generally. So first up is your review process holistic? Now this means they consider all portions of the application the exact same. There's no different weighting. They're going to look at every piece. It's not like there's a GPA cutoff. It's not like there's an extracurricular cutoff or an essay cutoff or anything like that. So this kind of tells you, again, is the entire application being reviewed, or do I really need to make sure my GPA and my transcript are great and the rest maybe isn't so heavily weighted or so heavily regarded? In addition, it might give you a little insight into making sure you talk about different pieces of yourself throughout the application, you know, putting a little piece of yourself in the extracurricular, a different side to your story in the essay, and maybe a completely other side to yourself in those letters of rec. Now, those follow-up questions at the bottom, again, if the process is not holistic, you might want to know, is there an automatic GPA cutoff? If so, that might save you an application fee. Or it might be something along the lines of, am I being reviewed within the context of my region or just my individual school? Or am I looked at as a state cohort? Any of those kind of follow-ups. Next, we have, does your school look at demonstrated interest? Now, demonstrated interest is when schools kind of keep track of your visits, your interactions, maybe whether or not you participated in some kind of event, all of those types of things. And then that can actually be used and regarded during that application review. Now, really the follow-up questions here are the most important. So if they say, yes, we do track that demonstrated interest, you're gonna wanna know how you can make sure you're registered properly, how you can make sure you get checked in or marked as attended for all of those events. You also might wanna know, you know, are my questions being recorded, or is it just my participation in events or my attendance, or maybe whether I open an email or not? Again, every school is going to do it a little bit differently, but by finding out whether they engage in demonstrated interest at all, it might shape how you interact with that school or how you interact with that admissions counselor. Again, it's another way for you to show that commitment to that university, and they'll be looking for that. Next, we have, is your school test optional? If so, how will they be regarded during the review process? Now, several universities across the nation, across the world, went test optional due to the coronavirus. Some institutions were already test optional beyond that due to a lack of access or a lack of representation in those tests already. Now, that being said, every school, unfortunately, again, is going to do it differently, and that's our bad to you all. However, by finding out whether they're test optional, it might help you understand maybe what part of the application they're really focusing on. It also might help you understand maybe kind of their take to different issues. For example, if they just went test optional for the COVID-19 crisis, maybe you might want to ask, you know, why were you not test optional before? Or if they were test optional before, maybe ask how they've been adjusting and how they've changed their review process to reflect that missing element, or not missing element, but removed element. Some good things you're going to want to ask are, if I don't submit test scores, will I be equally considered for scholarship and admission? Make sure you read the fine print at all of those universities. They might be test optional for admission, but scholarship consideration still requires a test. Again, just make sure you're doing your homework and asking those follow-ups. And then finally, should I talk about COVID in my essay? Now, this is the only question throughout the presentation that we're actually going to flat out answer. And the answer is, please do not talk about COVID in your essay. In both the common application and the coalition application, there are specific questions that allow you to discuss the COVID crisis and how it affected you, your school, and your family. So please talk about it in that space. If it doesn't fit there, or if there's something we really need to know, go ahead and email us or call us. Save your essay to tell us your story. That's where you really get to shine. That's where we learn the most about you. That's where we really, that's what really makes or breaks your application. So make sure you're telling your story and your truth in that space. We understand that this year has been absolutely bonkers for all of you. However, we want to make sure you're still given that chance to shine and given that chance to tell us who you are. So keep the COVID in that certain area or in that certain designated space, and make sure your essay is reflecting you and whatever it is that we need to know about you. Now, Casey,
so at this point,
more about those final thoughts.
Yeah, I was going to say, Christian, at this point, if we want to go ahead and start having anyone who has any questions going ahead and throwing them in the Q&A, you can feel free to do that, and then we will answer them out loud. But in terms of final thoughts, we want you to know that we are here for you, and we are your go-to for whatever you need when it comes to the admission process. So if you were confused about a document, or there's something on our website when it comes to the honors application, or you're not sure whether you should list this major or this major, whatever it may be, please don't feel like you're ever bothering us. We are here to help you. We are here to be your support system. So whether that be emailing us, calling us, chatting us, whatever each institution offers. And I think this really goes beyond just the three of us as representatives for our institutions. Admission counselors across the board we're really your go-to. So you should not feel that just because we are the ones potentially reviewing your application, that you should be scared of us or anything like that. We were in your shoes probably not so long ago. So we understand that it's very overwhelming. There's a lot to keep track of, especially when separating out different institutions' requirements and what they do ask for and what they don't ask for. So please feel free to use us, reach out to us. There's no such thing as a silly question. Trust me, we have heard every question. That's why we wanted to go ahead and do this presentation, since these are some of the ones that were asked the most. But truly, we are here for you. So please go ahead and use us. So with that being said, feel free to go ahead, throw any questions you have in the box there. And so our first question, and Christian, I'm going to have you take this one just because you were talking about it. A student said, is it okay if I wrote about COVID in my essay because it went with the prompt?
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, yes, if you do have a powerful story, or if that's what you choose to use with your essay, that is your space. I certainly, however you want to use it is how you want to use it. But that being said, again, I think we are looking to learn more about you. So if there are other spaces in your application where you can give us some of those personality pieces, maybe in your extracurricular description, or maybe a letter of recommendation really gives us that piece. Again, whatever you want to write about in that essay space is up to you. That's why it's your space and your 500 or 600 words that you get to use. And I'm sure it's going to be a great one. So I look forward to reading it. But if you have the opportunity, just make sure you're putting a little piece of yourself in there. Now, if you are able to do that in that essay, awesome, keep rocking. But if not, again, feel free to fold some of those pieces into other parts of that application process. But that's a great question. Again, I always like to tell students in your essay, use the words I and me and we. It's your space to brag about yourself. I always make the joke, a lot of our applicants write really beautiful stories about how their grandma is their role model. But by the end of that essay, I am so ready for Grandma Betty to move into the dorm, and I don't know anything about you. So just make sure your essay is telling your story. Whatever that story is, though, that's up to you. Good question.
Here's another question. Casey, if you want to go ahead and answer this one, where should I look for scholarships? So I think probably overall scholarships and then also maybe institution-specific scholarships.
Yeah, so there's actually so many resources out there that are completely underutilized. I mean, I'm talking billions of dollars of unclaimed money that students just don't know about that are for public scholarships. So a couple that are just on top of my head are scholarships.com, fastweb.com, myscholarly.com. There's so many of them. A lot of them are essay based. And so, take the time that you have when you're done writing your college essays and all of that you have going on to write about yourself. There are very specific scholarships. Like there's one if you are over 6 feet tall, if you are a left-hander, if you love to do underwater basket weaving, there's a scholarship for you. It's crazy. They're very specific. So definitely take the time, make it your full-time job over winter break or something to go ahead and apply to all of those and take the time, and you'll be surprised by how much money is just sitting there for you. And also make sure you reach out to your counselors, or if you have a career center specialist. I know you can't really physically visit them unless you're attending an institution that is in person, but a lot of times they'll have resources for you to check out on public scholarships. In addition to that, there are university-specific scholarships, and a lot of these are based off of merit. So, depending on your GPA or test scores, if they're looking at that, or if they're test optional, they'll review your application holistically. A lot of institutions will require an additional essay or scholarship questions to apply for scholarships, or there are others that you just simply press submit on your application and you will automatically be reviewed for scholarships. So it's really important to kind of keep track of these differences. I always tell students it's great if you create an Excel sheet and have a list of all of your institutions that you're applying to. Let's say you're applying to 8. Hopefully nothing crazy, nothing more than that. But let's say you're applying to 8, and in that you have the deadlines, you have whether or not they're on the coalition, the common, or the regular application. You also see if there is early action or early decision. And then on there have scholarships and what are the deadlines, because that is a huge shame if you are applying to that school and you've already missed the scholarship deadline. So make sure you stay organized with those. And if I forgot anything, Randy or Christian, let me know.
No, the only other thing I was going to say is I think that when students say, what's your one recommendation throughout the application process, I can't echo making a spreadsheet enough, because it is so helpful, even just between our 3 institutions right here. I guarantee, and I haven't talked with Christian or Casey about this, but I guarantee that in order to make a complete application, we all ask for different things. And so being able to track all of that in a spreadsheet, track how many letters of recommendation are needed. Do you need to personally reach out to your recommender to let them know that they should be looking out for an email? And so there are just so many different things to keep track of. So I definitely recommend the spreadsheet. Feel free to keep asking us other questions. We are here to answer them. The only other thing I was going to go back to was that first question about, when we were talking about general essay writing, is we read so many applications a day when we are reviewing applications. So, some institutions, each staff member will read 10 a day. I've heard some institutions, they're reading 80 a day. So that could be 80 essays that we are reading per day. So what makes your essay stand out? We read a lot about torn ACLs. We do read a lot about, Christian, I think you said Grandma Betty. So we read a lot about similar kind of storylines. And so I think it does help if you can figure out what sets you apart. Here's a good question, and I think we can kind of each answer this. I'll go ahead and answer it first, and then we'll have Christian answer, and then Casey. Speaking of essays, what was your most memorable essay? This is awesome. I had somebody write about a box of crayons, and the way that they wrote it was, I don't want to say it was magical because that sounds so cheesy, but they literally wrote about a box of crayons and how they, based on, which crayon they used the most, some of it was dull, some of them were sharp, and how it kind of navigated them through their journey in middle school and high school because they overcame so many different obstacles. And it all came back to these different crayon colors by Crayola. So that's definitely one that stuck out to me. It could have easily gone sideways. We talk a lot about analogies and a lot about comparing one thing to another. And so you do have to be able to do it effectively, but that was a really neat essay that I read and definitely stuck with me. Christian, how about you?
I mean, I feel like there's always, every day I have a new favorite. It truly is my favorite section of the application. One that particularly stands out to me is, so for us, we have an optional essay the prompt is, tell us what makes you colorful. And the student wrote all about how she sees the world in purple, and how she sees the world as various shades of purple for different reasons, and they make her feel various different things. And at the very end of the essay, she, in a tasteful and not this obvious way, essentially said, and in case you forgot, my name is Violet. And so the entire essay was just kind of all about her and how she sees the world based off of her personality, which she was calling purple. And so again, it's another example of Randy's, using your analogies and using your metaphors well. But that was a particularly memorable essay to me. Other essays that I think are particularly memorable are essays that feel honest. Sometimes I think students only want to talk about the positives, and sometimes it comes on a little too strong. Not that there's anything wrong with bragging about how awesome y'all are, but also I think there's something nice about when a student says, you know what, I am great at swimming, but I'm not good at biology. And then they kind of talk about an adventure they had there. So showing some humility, showing some hubris, both of those can be good things to do in an essay as well.
And then for me, definitely not probably as exciting sounding as these two, but my ultimate favorite one was last year, and this student was talking about her drive to school every morning with her dad. And I think it struck me because it really showed her maturity and how precious those moments are, because she was going to be leaving for school, 3 months later to go to college. And just having that maturity and being able to draw meaning from your life really says a lot about you, even if it's just a mundane. It was the dialogue that she used, the examples. She made me laugh, she made me cry. If you're funny, be funny. If you're not funny, don't try to be funny. That's like a general rule of thumb. It will always fall flat. But I love that, because I get a lot of questions from students who say, Ms. Padgett, nothing exciting has happened to me, or nothing traumatic has happened to me. As admissions reps, nothing dramatic has happened to you. But we know that's life, that those things do happen. Don't think you have to write about heavy stuff for us to like your essay. It really just depends on your comfortability level. And again, it's drawing that meaning from your life and the day-to-day that can really help you stand out as well. And I guarantee you are more unique than you think.
Other questions that we have, feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat.
I also want to point out that with admissions, for contacting your reps, every rep or admissions counselor will have their contact information and their territory on our website. So depends on which county you're in. There will be a county or state associated with the rep. So if you're like, I have no idea how to get these questions answered and having a really hard time finding contact, it's this general email that I've been given. If you're not receiving the answer that you want, you can certainly reach out to that rep specifically, and all that information is on admissions websites.
All right, we have another question. Lots of questions about essays. How do you make an essay really good? Does it have to be risky, deep? So I'm going to go ahead and start with this, and then Casey, I'd love for you to follow up, just because I want to highlight what you just said about the importance of, really focusing on not trying to be funny if you're not funny. But also there's, when it comes to essay writing, I think the other thing that's really important is that we want to hear your voice. I think that's what makes an essay good, is that we want to hear from you. So it's okay to have other people look over your essay, but as soon as you've gone ahead and sent your essay to your aunt and your cousin and to your college counselor and to your teacher, and you're now collecting feedback from 4 different people, we've completely lost your voice. And we don't want to be admitting them, we want to be admitting you. So that's what I would say makes an essay good, is we want to hear it from you. We want to hear your voice. It is totally fine to have 1 or 2 people look at it, but that is kind of the prime for me, is, you know, really focusing on hearing it from you. So Casey, do you want to expand on that a little bit? And then we do have another question after that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that was a great place to start, Randy, is that it needs to be out of your voice. We can tell when someone else writes your essay, trust me. And again, it depends on the topic. So if that school is asking you to go deep, go risky, then that's a space to do that if you're comfortable. But if the prompt does not go there, it does not mean you have to take it there. So I think, again, most of my favorite essays are the ones that just are simple and have good examples and good grammar, and they show your uniqueness and your specific qualities. So, and more oftentimes than not, your essay is not going to admit you or not admit you. Think about that. With admissions, academics are one of the most important processes to read in the application. And the essay is certainly important, and your extracurriculars and letters of rec, all of that will play a role. It depends on where you're applying to, but don't stress out so much about the essay, because while it is important, you do have so many other components of your application that are also being looked at. So take a deep breath and take that pressure off yourself.
We have a few more questions here, all about essays. So one of the questions is, what are some good tips for writing a college essay? I think for now, we're gonna skip over that just because we talked about finding your voice, making sure that it's, you know, as unique to you as possible, making sure that you don't have too many people reviewing it, that it, you know, it truly is yours. Are there certain topics that you like reading more than others? Christian, if you want to answer that really quickly. And then there is another question here that's kind of tied into this. What's something that just kind of makes you go, yeah, no, and consider it disqualified when reading an essay? So are there any others that are kind of, I don't want to say off limit topics, but topics that we just say, oh, we're reading another one of these? So Christian, if you want to take those.
Yeah, so actually the first thing I was going to say is, with the common application or the coalition application, both of those at the end of all of their essay prompts essentially have a prompt that says insert work of writing here. So feel free, if none of those prompts are speaking to you, don't worry about it. Use that prompt. That's a-okay. I think a lot of students get bogged down picking the prompt that they think they'll be able to do the most with, but you should find the prompt that fits what you want to talk about. You know, if there's a certain piece of yourself that you really want to share, just pick the prompt that fits that. And if it doesn't fit, again, feel free to use that insert work here prompt. That's a great space for students as well. In terms of certain topics that I think might be better to avoid, don't try to be controversial. Don't try to change our minds. You know, I think a lot of students accidentally try to go for the very mature and very kind of worldly viewpoint, and they might talk about an issue that they don't quite understand as a graduating high school senior. Also, you never know who's reading your application. If politics are super important to you, that's great. And obviously your counselor is setting aside their own biases and their own involvement, but their enjoyment of that essay might be changed based off of a controversial topic such as that. Again, we all should put our biases aside, but you never know who's reading your application. Yes, of course, you know that we're your reps and obviously we'll be reading it, but maybe we'll take it to a committee process and there might be more eyes on that application.
And I do want to let you know that unfortunately we are at time.
I'm so sorry I went so long.
No, we're good. So if you do have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We're here for you. And thank you all for tuning in. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, great job. Thank you. And thank you all of our attendees for joining us tonight. After you close this window, a very quick 4-question survey will appear, so we appreciate you guys filling it out. Again, feel free to sign up for more sessions. You can check those out at strivescan.com/Virginia. And in about a week, you'll be able to find this session's recording as well as any other session recordings at strivescan.com/Virginia. Again, thank you so much. Have a great night.